South Africans are voting in what are expected to be the most competitive elections since the end of apartheid, which could result in the ruling African National Congress party losing its majority for the first time since Nelson Mandela led it to power 30 years ago. The national mood is grim owing to some of the world's highest rates of unemployment and inequality, power cuts, water shortages, and violent crime. Younger generations do not feel the same gratitude and loyalty to the ANC as many of their parents and grandparents do for leading the successful fight for multiracial democracy. Polls have consistently shown the ANC getting less than 50% of the national vote, down from 57.5% in the last elections in 2019. This raises the prospect of South Africa's first coalition government since the government of national unity during Mandela's single presidential term, when the country was seen as a beacon of hope for Africa and the world. I certainly think the ANC is not going to make 50%. The best case seems to be 46 to 47%, said David Everett, a professor at the University of Witwatersrand, who conducted polls for the party from 1993 until South Africa's most recent regional elections in 2021. The mood is very, very low, and many people attribute their unhappiness directly to the ANC. Millions more South Africans now have access to quality housing with electricity and running water than in 1994 when the ANC came to power, but rising unemployment along with corruption, scandals and rolling power cuts that have lasted up to 10 hours a day in recent years have contributed to a sense for many that the government no longer works for them. Even Mandela's home village of Kunu in the rural Eastern Cape no longer has piped water. More than 80% of South Africans said the country was going in the wrong direction in a 2022 poll by Pan-African survey organization Afrobarometer. 4 in 10 adults are out of work. Joy Ribestwe, who sells funeral insurance, accused ANC politicians of hoarding state resources for themselves. Ribestwe, 18, who is saving money to pay for a law degree, said voting had not crossed her mind. President Cyril Ramaphosa could do better, she said, speaking outside a supermarket on the outskirts of Deep Sloot, a poor township bordering verdant golf courses on Johannesburg northern fringes. The Democratic Alliance, the largest opposition party and the more pro-business than the ANC, can help South Africans, she said, but was not appealing either due to the oft-leveled accusation that it favors the interest of white people, which it denies. Democratic Republic of Congo has appointed a new government spokesperson, Tina Salama said in the early hours of Wednesday, ending an impasse that has mired the country in political uncertainty for months. President Felix Tshisekedi won a second term after elections in late 2023 that also handed his Sacred Union coalition a large majority in parliament, but internal jostling for jobs has delayed the formation of a new cabinet of ministers. The president eventually named Judith Suminwa as Congo's first female prime minister on April 1st and his ex-chief of staff, Vital Kamerhe, as parliament speaker on May 22nd, paving the way for the appointment of the government. The new cabinet comprises 54 ministers versus 57 in the last government, a smaller than expected downsizing despite pressure to reduce costs. In an announcement on state broadcaster, Salama said, Guy Kombombo Madame Vita has been appointed defense minister, a key role given Congo's costly 2-year conflict with the M23 rebel group in Eastern Territories. Madame Vita, a lawyer by training, was previously head of Congo's official gazette, the Journal of Record for Legal Acts. Dodo Fwamba Likunde was named finance minister, and Kizito Pakabomba was appointed to oversee the mines ministry and Congo's globally significant reserves of coltan, copper and other minerals. Referring to the delay forming a government, the president's communications director, Eric Yindu, said it took time for the different parties in the ruling coalition to find a compromise. Better that than a country full of conflict, he said. Tshisekedi formed his first government when he was elected in 2019. It was a coalition with his predecessor, Joseph Kabila, that broke up in 2021. Tshisekedi then formed another coalition. Since the last election in December, the Sacred Union has held around 95% of National Assembly seats. Israeli tanks conducted a second day of probing attacks across Rafah on Wednesday after Washington said the assault did not amount to a major ground incursion off the southern Gazan city that U.S. officials had told Israel to avoid. Israeli tanks advanced to the heart of Rafah for the first time on Tuesday after a night of heavy bombardment, defying an appeal from the International Court of Justice to end its attack on the city, one of the last places of refuge in Gaza. The United States, Israel's closest ally, reiterated its opposition to a major Israeli ground offensive in Rafah, but said on Tuesday it did not believe such an operation was underway. Unlike tactics used in Israel's ground offensive in the rest of the enclave, Rafah's residents said Israeli tanks mounted raids into Tel Sultan in western Rafah and Yibna and near Shabura in the center before retreating to positions near the border with Egypt. The armed wings of Hamas and the Islamic Jihad said they confronted the invading forces with anti-tank rockets and mortar bombs, as well as blowing up previously planted explosive devices. The Israeli military said 3 soldiers had been killed and 3 others badly wounded in combat in southern Gaza on Wednesday, without elaborating. Israel's public broadcaster said they were hurt by an explosive device set off in a building in Rafah. Palestinian health officials said several people were wounded on Wednesday morning by Israeli fire in the eastern area of Rafah, where they also said some stores of aid were set ablaze. Residents said constant Israeli bombardment overnight destroyed many homes in the area, from where most people have fled after orders by Israel to evacuate. Some residents reported seeing what they described as unmanned, robotic armored vehicles opening fire from machine guns in some parts of the city. The Israeli military said 3 soldiers had been killed in combat in southern Gaza on Wednesday as it pressed ahead with its offensive in Rafah. 3 more soldiers were badly wounded in the same incident, the military said, though it provided no further details. Israel's public broadcaster said they were injured by an explosive device set off in a building in Rafah. Defying an order from the International Court of Justice, Israeli forces have kept up their offensive in Rafah, where they aim to root out the last major intact formations of Hamas fighters and rescue hostages. International unease over Israel's 3-week-old Rafah offensive has turned to outrage since an airstrike on Sunday set off a blaze in a tent camp in a western district of the city, killing at least 45 people. Israel said it had been targeting 2 senior Hamas operatives and had not intended to cause civilian casualties. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that something unfortunately went tragically wrong. The Israeli military said it was investigating the possibility that munitions stored near a compound targeted by Sunday's airstrike may have ignited. Israel told around 1 million Palestinian civilians displaced by the almost 8-month-old war to evacuate from Rafah before launching its incursion in early May. Around that many have fled the city since then, according to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. On Tuesday, the United States, Israel's closest ally, reiterated its opposition to a major Israeli ground offensive in Rafah, but said it did not believe such an operation was underway. Israel's military denied striking a tent camp Wednesday west of Rafah on Tuesday after Gaza's health authority said Israeli tank shelling had killed at least 21 people there in an area Israel has designated a civilian evacuation zone. Earlier, the final appeal from the International Court of Justice, Israeli tanks advanced to the heart of Rafah for the first time after a night of heavy bombardment. Spain, Ireland, and Norway officially recognized the Palestinian state, a move that further deepened Israel's international isolation. The United States, Israel's closest ally, reiterated its opposition to a major Israeli ground offensive in Rafah, but said it did not believe such an operation was underway. Describing the U.S. view of what could constitute a major offensive in Rafah, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby told reporters that it would involve large numbers of troops in columns and formations in some sort of coordinated maneuver against multiple targets on the ground. That is a major ground operation, Kirby said. We have not seen that. 2 days after an Israeli airstrike on another camp stirred global condemnation. Gaza Emergency Services said 4 tank shells on Tuesday hit a cluster of tents in Al-Mawasi, a coastal strip Israel designated as an expanded humanitarian zone where it advised civilians in Rafah to go for safety. At least 12 of the dead on Tuesday were women, according to medical officials in a mass militant-run Palestinian enclave. But Israel's military later said in a statement, contrary to the reports from the last few hours, the IDF did not strike in the humanitarian area in Al-Mawasi. Israel told around 1 million Palestinian civilians displaced by the almost 8-month-old war to evacuate to Al-Mawasi when it launched Rafah in early May. Around that many have fled Rafah since then. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, reported on Tuesday. South Korea and the United Arab Emirates signed a trade agreement at a summit on Wednesday to sharply cut import duties and forge closer business and investment ties. The special bond between the two leaders serves as an opportunity to advance the countries' strategic partnership, the office of President Yoon Suk-yeol said in a statement. The Seoul summit, attended by UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, follows Yoon's state visit last year to Abu Dhabi and focused on energy and defense. On South Korea seeks to tap the investment potential of the energy-rich Gulf state. Yoon's office said the UAE reaffirmed last year's pledge of $30 billion in investment for South Korean businesses in areas from nuclear power and defense to hydrogen. The Abu Dhabi National Oil Company signed a letter of intent for Hanwha Ocean and Samsung Industries to distribute at least valued at about $1.5 billion, it said. Industry ministers formally signed a comprehensive economic partnership agreement agreed in October that will remove all tariffs on South Korean exports when it is ratified, South Korea said. South Korea has signed a series of global defense equipment contracts as part of its plans to become the world's 4th largest defense exporter by 2020. The UAE will also drop import duty on automobiles over the next decade, while South Korea's tariff on crude oil imports will be removed. The deal will eventually scrap tariffs on more than 90% of the imports of both nations. South Korea's crude oil imports from the UAE are expected to increase. Seoul's Minister of Trade told a press conference underlining the country's dependence on energy imports. The UAE is expected to sign a CEPA with Vietnam and the Philippines in the next few months, Minister of Foreign Trade Thani bin Ahmed Al-Zayudi said. On Tuesday, Sheikh Mohammed met the leader of some South Korea's top conglomerates, including J.Y. Lee of Samsung Electronics, SK Group Chairman Chae Tae-wong, and Kim Dang-kwan of Hanwha Group, which has emerged as a major defense contractor. No new arms deal was unveiled, but Yoon's office said both aim to boost cooperation of their Thailand's Attorney General will indict former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra for allegedly insulting the monarchy, an official said on Wednesday, in a setback to a political heavyweight whose loyalists are currently in government. The complaint lodged by the royalist military that ousted Yingluck Shinawatra had stemmed from an interview the influential tycoon gave to foreign media in 2015. Other charges include violence. The Attorney General has decided to indict Thaksin for charges. Spokesperson Prayuth Bedraguna said, adding he must appear in court on June 18th. Thaksin, 74, denies wrongdoing and has repeatedly pledged loyalty to the Crown, criticism of which is forbidden under Thailand's lèse-majesté law, one of the world's strictest of its kind. Thaksin would be the highest profile case among more than 270 prosecutions in recent years. Law, which carries a maximum jail term of 15 years for each perceived insult of the royal family. Thaksin did not appear at Wednesday's hearing, having been infected with COVID-19. His lawyer, Winiat Chamon, said a comprehensive defense had been prepared and Thaksin would seek bail. He questioned the authenticity of the video of the interview in which the alleged insult was made. Thaksin Shinawatra is ready to prove his innocence in the justice system, Winiat conference. China and Japan have agreed to resume regular talks between their ruling parties for the first time in 6 years, officials from Japan's coalition government said on Wednesday. Ties between Asia's top two economies have been strained by issues including Japan's concerns about China's maritime activities in the East and South China Seas and China's protest against Japan from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in the ocean. But the agreement to restart the talks comes after Chinese Premier Li Xiang praised what he called a restart in relations with U.S. allies Japan and South Korea after their leaders met for the first three-way summit in 4 years on Monday. The three agreed to revive trade and security dialogue hampered by global tensions. Toshimitsu Motegi, Secretary of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, reached the agreement on talks with Liu Jianchao, who leads the Communist Party's body in charge of managing ties with foreign political parties during Liu's visit to Tokyo on Wednesday. Liu specifically requested to restart the Japan-China ruling party Exchange Council. Secretary General Motegi expressed his approval. Tatsuya Ito, an LDP lawmaker present at the meeting, told reporters. Makoto Nishida, a lawmaker from the LDP Kometo, who was also present at the talks, confirmed a decision had been made for the exchanges to resume. The details of how and when the talks would start have not yet been finalized, Ito added. The ruling party talks were previously held around once a year, but have not taken place since 2018. Liu, who has kept up a busy schedule since he came to office in 2022, stoking expectation he is being groomed to become China's next foreign minister, also met with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa earlier on Wednesday. Kishida told Liu that he wanted to build stable and constructive ties with China and that exchanges between political parties were important for developing relations. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We will be back after this break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
every day.
Corruption not in my country.
Driver, why you just dey jack us up and down like this now?
I hope nobody carry belle.
Why you ask oh?
Because this road where they see so, it no guarantee safe delivery.
We just dey vote for government, but we not get good governance.
At all.
Road so e no dey, light o usa, the infrastructure nko e come turn to be forbidden fruit for the city.
Corruption, spoil everything. Hello?
Hello, madam. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mrs. Ayeni. I am calling from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs.
Okay. Okay, I've been expecting your call.
Madam, remove this your phone from loudspeaker.
No vex, now my phone be like that. Hello?
Are you there?
I hear, I'm hearing you.
Yes. We saw a copy of your invoice for computers, printers, and laptops.
Yes. Are you working on them now?
Ma, the prices you quoted are way too high now.
Madam, sorry, please don't cost.
We found the laptop you said is 1.8 million naira for 600,000 naira.
Hello? Now my body network there. I can't hear you. Network is bad.
Madam, we can hear you. Continue.
Hello, I can't hear you. We call you back.
That behavior not good now.
Madam, now this kind behavior they kill our country. You suppose do things differently. Make Nigeria for better.
Corruption not in my country.
This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
and with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
Corruption not in my country.
I don't get a lot. Boy, they won't booga me small. They say, man, give them bribe. I say, nothing. Okay, now, we'll go block later. You remember that contract we will do that time now? They don't pay.
But first, you see the house rent with the old things. We go first call caretaker, take the money, slap am.
Beg, see, you know, say I get annual levy why they pay for club. Where me and boys they shark beer in our house, I go pay that one. You remember say me and tell you I go buy you motor. I go buy now.
Okay, they pay you money now. We don't they beg caretaker? Why would they beg landlord, old man, and they agree give us time? Money can't come now. You won't divert time. You said na corruption. Corruption, not in my house and not in my country.
Sure?
Sure.
Corruption not in my country.
This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
and with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
Corruption not in my country.
Kasali, I hope so my car don't ready. I get interview in 30 minutes.
Okay, you don't ready. I just the last minute instruction where you give me yesterday. Now in the cause more delay.
Which instruction?
Maybe now you say make I change the meter, make you no read again.
Which time I make you change meter? Oh, Kasali, why you do like this now? You don't get sense. You don't read the text message. Nobody I want send them to. Like Kasali, my electrician, make it come house, call me, do my meter so that you don't go to read again. You know electrician?
You're electrician.
Yes, now.
So you call Kasali electrician, make it come help you adjust your meter, make it for no read again, Abi. So you said you want join people where be say they no want they pay NEPA bill again, Abi. Oga, you know good now. You don't use you don't they behave like tea, all these stiff people.
Oh, what you change from your motor? What you change from?
Two lights. Fuel gauge. Speedometer.
For what now? You for come over home my motor. I better identify for me.
Okay. Now don't do something we corrupt. And something come backfire. Now go come they find how to dodge them.
What you talk?
They greet you.
Corruption not in my country.
This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
and with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
Corruption not in my country.
What you want to buy?
Potato. Small basket. I want plantain. But why your plantain can't hard like this?
Madam, now the outside hard. Inside there, it is very soft.
Madam, wallahi make her no buy them. Make her show you something. What? What in be this one? Madam, this one now the chemical where they put on for the plantain make her ripe up.
So you dey put chemical for plantain wey people go chop?
Na water, no be chemical.
Even na water. You know say Pela I don't talk and say water and not be enemy. Drink am.
Oya collect that water, drink am.
I just stop finish. See my belly. After e don big. I just stop drink water finish. I don
drink am. Wait, you drink am now. Wow. I dey sell am plantain, I go come put am for chemical because I want to make a ripe go. That one I talk am now corruption. Corruption. No be for this kaswa, come no be for this country. Na me talk am.
Corruption not in my country.
This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
and with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
Welcome back. This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies called on Wednesday for ceasefire and unimpeded humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip, where millions of people face worsening hunger. The war-torn enclave is suffering from a humanitarian catastrophe nearly 7 months after Israel launched a devastating offensive in response to the October 7 Hamas-led attacks that killed 1,200 people in Israel. We desperately need a political solution that will allow us to have a ceasefire to get aid in, IFRC President Kate Forbes said in an interview in the capital Manila. We are ready to make a difference. We have to have access, and to have access there has to be a ceasefire, said Forbes, who in December became the second woman to ever hold the top job at the world's largest humanitarian network. The IFRC president is a volunteer position and oversees a network that unites 191 organizations working during and after disasters and wars, such as the Palestine Red Crescent Society, which has ambulance crews in Gaza. Forbes said she had seen the atrocious situation in Rafah during a visit in February, months before Israel launched a military assault on the southern Gaza city, which had been sheltering more than 1 million Palestinians who fled assaults on other parts of the enclave. Georgia's parliament voted on Tuesday to override a presidential vote of a bill on foreign agents that has plunged the South Caucasus country into crisis, ignoring criticism from the West, which says the legislation is authoritarian and Russian-inspired. The vote to ignore the objections of Georgian President Salom Zurabishvili, whose powers are mostly ceremonial, sets the stage for the Speaker of Parliament to sign the bill into law in the coming days. In an address after the vote, Zurabishvili, who is trying to broker an alliance with opposition parties to contest parliamentary elections on October 26, said ruling party lawmakers had chosen Russian slavery and encouraged people to vote them out at the polls. The dispute about the draft law has come to be seen as a key test of whether Georgia, for 3 decades among the most pro-Western of the Soviet Union's successor states, would maintain its Western orientation or pivot instead to Russia. Thousands of opponents of the bill gathered outside the fortress-like parliament building during voting on Tuesday for the latest in a series of demonstrations that are among the largest in Georgia since it won independence from Moscow in 1991 as the Soviet Union crumbled. Georgy Jasfili said lawmakers who had voted to override the president's veto were the most treacherous people in our history. Sweden will donate 2 radar surveillance and command aircraft to Ukraine to boost its defenses in the war with Russia, the Swedish government said on Wednesday, as part of its largest aid package to Ukraine so far, worth about 13.3 billion Swedish crowns. The Saab airborne surveillance and control 890 aircraft allows easier long-range target identification and will help Ukraine with the planned introduction of F-16 fighter jets donated by other Western countries, Sweden said. They will complement and reinforce the F-16 defense systems, Defense Minister Paul Johnson told a press briefing in Stockholm. Ukraine's Air Force, which relies on a relatively small fleet of old Soviet-era jets, wants F-16s to help enhance its air defenses amid regular Russian airstrikes and to push fighter jets. Earlier this week, Ukraine's defense minister said he hoped the first F-16 fighter jets would be delivered to Ukraine very soon. The Swedish government said last week it planned to give military support to Ukraine totaling 75 billion Swedish crowns over 3 years. Sweden will now speed up orders for S-106 Global I aircraft to replace the donated planes, Johnson said. The Biden administration said on Tuesday it was closely monitoring the probe into a deadly Israeli airstrike it called tragic, but that the recent deaths in Rafah didn't constitute a major ground operation there that crosses any U.S. red lines. The Israelis have said this is a tragic mistake. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby told reporters at the White House when asked about whether the event over the weekend qualified as the type of death and destruction U.S. officials have warned could result in the withholding of more aid. The U.S. here or a quota, Kirby said. We've also said we don't want to see a major ground operation in Rafah that would really make it hard for the Israelis to go after Hamas without causing extensive damage and potentially a large number of deaths. We have not seen that yet, he said, noting that Israel's operations were mostly in a corridor on the outskirts of Rafah. Asked if he was saying the recent ground operation in Rafah would not prompt a U.S. withdrawal of more military aid, Kirby said, I believe that is what I've been saying here. Recent deaths in Rafah have tested President Joe Biden's promise to withhold weapons from Israel if the U.S. ally made a major invasion of Rafah that puts displaced persons there at risk. Speaking at a ceremonial event in Washington, a U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris said the word tragic doesn't even begin to describe an Israeli strike on Sunday that triggered a fire in a tent camp in the Gaza of Rafahans. In a response to a reporter's question, also followed what Gaza health authorities described as Israeli tank shelling of a tent camp in an evacuation area west of Rafah that killed at least 21 people on Tuesday. Israel said that something unfortunately went tragically wrong in Sunday's airstrike while its military denied shelling the tent camp on Tuesday. Israel said it had targeted 2 senior Hamas operatives in Sunday's operation and had not intended to cause civilian casualties. The White House on Tuesday provided the most complete definition yet of what it considers a major ground operation in Rafah that could trigger a change in United States policy towards Israel and said Israel's actions there have not yet reached that level. We have smash into Rafah. We have not seen them go into with large units, large numbers of troops in columns and formations in some sort of coordinated maneuvers on the ground. That is a major ground operation. We have not seen that, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby told reporters at a briefing. Israel's 3-week-old Rafah offensive stirred renewed outrage and prompted an outcry from global leaders after an airstrike on Sunday that Gaza officials said killed at least 45 people when a blaze ignited in a tent camp in a western district. The Biden administration has repeatedly warned Israel against launching a large-scale military offensive in Rafah, a city in southern Gaza packed with refugees who followed Israel's previous orders to evacuate. President Joe Biden himself publicly warned Israel this month that the U.S. would stop supplying it with weapons if Israeli forces conduct a major invasion there without a credible plan to protect civilians. Israel told around 1 million Palestinian civilians displaced by the war to evacuate al-Mawasi into Rafah in early May. Around that, many have fled Rafah. Since then, the U.S. Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, reported on Tuesday. Asked about reports that Israeli forces have moved into central Rafah, Kirby said, my understanding is, and I believe the Israelis have spoken to this, that they are moving along something called the Philadelphia Corridor, which is on the outskirts of the town, not in the town proper. We have not seen a major ground operation, and these tanks are moving along a corridor that they have told us previously that they would use on the outskirts of the town to try to put pressure on Hamas, Kerry said. The World Court last week ordered Israel to immediately halt its military assault on Rafah in a landmark emergency ruling in South Africa's case accusing Israel of genocide. Israel said it had targeted 2 senior Hamas operatives and not intended to cause civilian. Jurors are likely to begin deliberations on Wednesday in Donald Trump's hush money trial, sorting through weeks of evidence and testimony behind closed doors as they determine whether he will become the first U.S. president convicted of a crime. It was far from certain how long they might take to reach a verdict in the case with Trump, 77, who is accused of falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to a porn star in the final weeks of the 2016 election. The 12 jurors have sat silently in a New York courtroom for more than 6 weeks as prosecutors laid out their case and Trump's lawyers tried to knock it down. Their verdict could upend the 2024 presidential race in which Trump is seeking again to win the White House. The Republican is locked in a tight contest with Democratic President Joe Biden, and polling has found that a guilty verdict could cost Trump support among independent and some Republican voters. A verdict of not guilty would remove a major legal barrier, freeing Trump from the obligation to juggle court appearances and campaign stops. If convicted, he would be expected to appeal. Trump faces 3 other criminal prosecutions, but they are not expected to go to trial before the November 5th election. The trial was due to resume at 10 a.m. with Justice Juan Merchan, who has overseen the case, issuing detailed instructions to the jury. After that process, which could take several hours, the jury will begin deliberations. President Joe Biden will unveil a new coalition in Philadelphia on Wednesday to court black voters, a critical voting bloc that is showing signs of weakness for Democrats ahead of the November election. Black voters have historically turned out for Biden and Democrats, but polls show they could be less supportive of him this year, while their support for his rival, Donald Trump, in national and state polls has been surprisingly high for a Republican. Democrats have long banked on strong showings in Philadelphia and more recently its suburbs to offset weakness in more conservative parts of Pennsylvania, a closely divided state that Biden narrowly won in 2020. The campaign's concern is not that the city's black voters will shift towards Trump, but that too many of them may sit out the election. Biden is slated to speak at Girard College, a historic boarding school founded to serve poor white orphan boys that disintegrated in 1968 following a 14-year struggle by civil rights activists. He will be joined by Vice President Kamala Harris and several local and national high-profile black Democrats, including Maryland Governor Wes Moore and Congressional Black Caucus Chair Stephen Hosford of Nevada. The event will officially launch black voters for Biden, Harris, the campaign said. Earlier this month, Trump held a rally in New York City's South Bronx neighborhood as part of his efforts to exploit Biden's weakening support among Hispanic and black voters. It will be Biden's 3rd trip to Philadelphia and 6th to Pennsylvania this year, continuing a deep focus on the swing state where polling shows he narrowly trails Trump. In Pennsylvania, Biden is doing slightly worse with black voters than 4 years ago, though he still wins the vast majority, according to a New York Times Philadelphia Inquirer survey released last week. He was the choice of 69% of black voters now, compared with 79% in June 2020. The mining company BHP has urged its takeover target, Anglo American, to extend its deadline as talks continue between the two rivals. The companies have been in discussions over a deal worth almost £39 billion since Anglo rejected it a week ago amid efforts to come to an agreement on the structure for a potential takeover. Australia's BHP faces a deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday to make a firm offer or walk away from takeover talks. The mining company said it had put forward a number of socio-economic measures in an attempt to ease concerns over its bid and called for more time to discuss this with Anglo American. BHP's three takeover approaches all had a requirement for its rival to spin off its South African operations, resulting in heavy criticism from the government in Pretoria. Anglo American also opposed this. However, Anglo has proposed its own corporate shake-up, including a pledge to break up the 107-year-old business and sell its platinum division and its De Beers diamond arm in a plan that has the backing of the South African government. In a statement on Wednesday, BHP said BHP believes that the proposed measures it has put forward provide substantial risk protection for Anglo-American shareholders and supplement the significant value uplift that Anglo-American shareholders will receive from the potential combination. BHP believes a further extension of the deadline is required to allow for further engagement on its proposal. This announcement does not amount to a firm intention to make an offer, and there can be no certainty that an offer will be made. The New South Wales government has been urged to set up an in-house consulting service and ban bureaucrats from taking on relevant consulting jobs for 6 months after they leave the public service. An NSW parliamentary inquiry into the use of private consulting services by government made the recommendations after it found the former coalition government was too reliant on consultant and paid for work normally designed for the public service when it was in power. The inquiry, which was led by a committee dominated by Labour MPs, was launched after a report by the NSW Auditor General found the coalition had spent more than $1 billion on consultants between 2017 and 2022. It was also revealed that more than 25% of consultancy fees were concentrated with the Big Four firms, including the scandal-hit PwC. In a scathing report released on Wednesday, the inquiry found the coalition had been overly reliant on PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte and KPMG. The Greens MP Abigail Boyd, who chaired the inquiry, said the coalition had issued a consultant contract at a rate of 1 engagement every hour in its last 5 years in government. And that's the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the major stories. South Africa, voters participate in most competitive elections since apartheid. Gaza, Israeli tanks conduct second-day probing. Asia, China, Japan agree to resume regular talks between ruling parties. Geneva, IFRC calls for ceasefire, unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza. United States, Rafah major ground operation could trigger United States policy change. Australia, NSW government asked to set up in-house consulting services. I am Valentina Lawrence. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on all our social media platforms: X Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok Atlantic TV Network 1, or you can watch us live on our website atlanticnetwork.tv. Remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do not go anywhere. Business news comes up next.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and